What can this pencil teach us about relationships? Most relationship advice acts as if love runs on a completely different set of laws to everything else in life. There's all this talk about the divine feminine and masculine energies, the mysteries of attraction, and the destiny of soulmates. It's as if relationships are magic. And a couple of centuries ago, that's exactly how medicine used to be treated. It was mysticism, it was rituals, it was guesswork, it was potions and witches. But then science showed us that the body is a system. When you look at something from a system, you stop moralizing about failures and seeing sickness as a punishment from God, and you start learning the mechanics of what makes the system work. Relationships are a system too. A relationship is two nervous systems with two sets of dreams trying to build one life. So when pressure rises, the temptation is always the same: to coerce, to control, to manipulate, because your dream says, we'll both be so happy if they just do what they're supposed to. So we end up in a tug of war between, if you would just do this, we'd have the perfect life. And no, if you just do this, we'd have the perfect life. Every system has a limit. It flexes until it fractures. That is the science of fracturing. It's not bad character. It's just what happens when you pull in different directions. And if you look closely, you'll see it everywhere. People are burning out under pressure at work. Teams turning tense and brittle, departments against each other. Couples who love each other acting like enemies. Pressure doesn't create who you are. It reveals what code you're running. And under pressure, as Archilochus said, humans don't rise to the level of their aspiration, fall to the level of their training. That default level is protection. And that protection is about survival. It's where we regress to our younger self. And this is often what produces fracture. Fracture escalates in a predictable way. It starts when we tighten in response to stress. Then we're seeking control, because when you're scared, control feels like safety. Then control becomes correction. And then it becomes punishment. And then it becomes, I'll show you. And you deserve this. Or this hurts me more than it hurts you. And when it's a situation of power, that ladder doesn't stay private. It becomes culture. That's what we're talking about this month. Because the default instinctive relational pattern is to fracture. And the meaning of being a unifier is to override that instinctive response. The same protection response and dynamic runs through leadership and love. It's the same operating system in two different contexts. A different language, but the same mechanism. It's threat leads to protection, leads to fracture. Because feeling under threat leads people to be protective of themselves, which leads to a fracturing of the relationship. This is a dynamic that we all know, because we've all experienced it at some time or another. It's that moment when your chest tightens, when your face hardens, your mind starts racing. You stop asking, how do we solve this? And you start asking, how do I control this situation to protect myself? That shift is key, because in that moment, you're not trying to connect. You're trying to feel safe. And that moment of fracture is dangerous because it feels justified. It feels like truth, but it isn't truth. It's a response to a perceived threat. It's easy to feel judgmental, to feel that this only happens to weak people, but it doesn't. It happens to all of us. There's a moment in history that always comes to mind for me. Abraham Lincoln is one of the acknowledged greatest leaders in history, and he was famous for holding together one of the most diverse team of rivals. He unified America after the Civil War. His Emancipation Proclamation freed 4 million slaves. His Gettysburg Address redefined America's view of itself up till today. But 2 decades earlier, 32-year-old Abraham Lincoln was on suicide watch. His friend had removed razors and anything sharp because all Lincoln keeps saying is he wants to die. He wrote a letter saying that I am now the most miserable man living. And people will explain that away as depression. And Lincoln was known to go through periods of depression. But they're missing the lesson to all of us, because it's what happens to humans when the pressure that they're under exceeds their capacity to cope. And here's another example from someone who wasn't a depressive personality. He was, if anything, the poster boy for strength, optimism, and resilience. Alexander the Great. By 30, he was all-powerful. He'd conquered more of the known world than anyone before him. Never lost a battle. Years of constant warfare, constant threat, no recovery, no maintenance. But also the pressure of running a kingdom, pressure stacked on pressure, desperately seeking the glory of eternal fame. And trying to motivate an army that had fought and conquered for years, and managing the expectation of this massive empire. So one night at a feast, he's drunk, and his closest friend contradicts him. Not an enemy. This is someone who had saved his life in battle. And in that moment, Alexander snaps. In a fit of rage, he grabs a spear and kills him. We can hear that now and we just say, that's just ego, or it's temper, or it's the cruelty of a tyrant. But that's a misunderstanding of the hardware. The hardware is your nervous system under threat. See, Alexander was broken with guilt when he realized what he'd done. He was overcome with grief and guilt. He didn't eat for 3 days and he was close to suicide. It's easy for us to look at these situations and judge people as a bad person, but this is more about physics. Any structure that's under maximal load for years with no recovery will eventually fail. Even Alexander, the most powerful man in the world. So this isn't about depression and it isn't anger. It's about load exceeding capacity. I live just outside Ipswich, and there's a bridge over the River Orwell, the A14. It's the main road into and out of Suffolk. Now, when wind hits 60 miles an hour, they close it. When there's a crash, they close it. And sometimes when someone reaches breaking point and they threaten to jump off it, they close it. And it's not because the bridge is evil, but because the load it can cope with has to be managed. And sometimes after a crash, it closes again to be strengthened. Relationships are like that. They can carry a certain load of stress until a build-up of pressure and traffic with ongoing demands means that they can't. I'll give you a personal example. Last summer, my fiancée and I went to Egypt. We were looking for a break to relax and recharge. Remember the example of the Orwell Bridge? Before we even got to the airport, traffic was building up. And we both have a lot of responsibilities. Both my parents have advanced Alzheimer's, and there were massive problems with their care that we almost didn't go. So we weren't arriving rested. We were reaching our limit. And I was monitoring home in real time, which meant that even the smallest thing could be the last straw that tips over the edge. And then on day 2, I got food poisoning. Now, Michelle wanted to help. I felt guilty and I didn't want her to miss out on the holiday. That was the gust, like the bridge closing. And for us, our relationship reached breaking point. So we were two people who love each other with time to relax. But in reality, we were at breaking point. We fought, we sulked, we barely spoke. We tried to talk it over, but our nerves were so frayed that the more that we talked just led to a new fight. What shocked me most wasn't that we struggled. It was, I teach this. I know the tools. But knowledge doesn't stop mechanics. You can know what to do, but your inner child fights to be right, to win at any cost. And you can feel that you're perfectly reasonable, but the unreasonableness of your partner pushes you into the fight zone. If the bridge is closed because the wind's too high, it doesn't matter how good of a driver you are, you're not getting across. When capacity is gone, you don't get your best self, you get your protective self. Here's what always baffles me. Two people go into a relationship full of love, and 10 years later, they can barely tolerate being in the same room with each other. Why? It's not because love disappeared, but it's because pressure fractured them into their worst selves. And once you've been fractured enough times, is you stop seeing a partner and you start seeing someone who hurts you. You see a threat. Then things get worse because instead of seeing the system, you blame the person. It's like looking at this broken pencil and saying, bad pencil, let me go and find a better one. But any pencil will break when the load exceeds its limit. Of course, people have different thresholds, different tolerances. Just as we have different susceptibilities to different diseases. But everyone has a limit. And when that threshold is breached, we break or we get sick. And back in the old days, we used to treat sickness as if it was a curse or a punishment from God. But now we understand systems. Same pressure, but different reserves. And relationships are the same. Same pressures. Yes, there are different tolerances, but the mechanics don't change. The question isn't, am I a good partner? It's, do we have the capacity to stay connected under this pressure? The first step where couples and teams actually get free is when you don't argue the content, but you report the capacity. You can say, I'm at my limit today. If we push this right now, I'm going to fracture. Then you can add a choice. Can we pause for 20 minutes or can we lower the load and try again? This does three things. It tells the truth, it stops you moralizing, and it interrupts the default path. Because when someone knows you're at the edge, they'll often stop treating the conversation like it's a courtroom and start treating it like the bridge in high wind. So the takeaway from this video is that fracturing is the default under pressure. And freedom is learning to choose. In the next video, I'm going to show you how this fracturing turns into a pattern of tyranny, how protection turns into loyalty tests, scapegoating, and punishing truth. At home, at work, and in our nations at large. The solution isn't be nicer. It's capacity, restraint, boundaries, and repair. Subscribe, and I'll see you there next week.